I'm gonna hand it over to Al. As soon as I get my screen share going up here. Okay.
Great, thanks, Kim. I'd like to start today with our land acknowledgement. Spanning generations, acknowledgement of the land is a traditional custom of Indigenous people when welcoming outsiders onto their land and into their homes. To build respectful relationships, acknowledging the land is an important part of reconciliation. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we acknowledge we are on and support mentoring for youth in the traditional territories across Alberta of the many First Nations from Treaties 6, 7, and 8, the Métis of the 8 Alberta settlements, and Inuit people whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. These lands are the traditional meeting grounds and homes for many Indigenous peoples for generations. We're grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We are all treaty people, beneficiaries of the peace and prosperity the treaties brought, and committed also to working toward the equity and justice the treaties promised.
Thank you so much, Al. We'll just go around and do a little bit of an introduction. So we have Shannon Whalen, who is from the CRCPD. She's kind of our tech guru and our background support. We have Al Chapman, who is the AMP lead. We have Caroline Gosling, who is our wonderful community member who keeps me on my toes as we co-facilitate these wonderful sessions. And then myself, FASD and mentoring and school specialist, co-facilitating many of these webinars with Caroline and Al. And then we have our special guest, Kimberly Buckberger, who is going to give us a little bit of special session on teen mentoring from her perspective. So she's a grade 1 teacher at Norwood School. So with that, Janice, I hope you're okay, but and you probably heard it, but we're going to be recording the session. And if you would like live captioning, just give thumbs up and Shannon will get that started. Okay.
My camera and my mic, if that's okay.
Yeah, so Janice, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to the group, and then yes, if you feel more comfortable doing that piece, then feel free.
Yes, just because, you know, I'm going to be doing some stuff while I'm listening. So my name is Janice Cube. I am the first vice president for QP Local 3550, which is Edmonton Public School Support Staff Union. I have worked with Edmonton Public Schools, well, it's over 30 years now, and I have been an EA and an admin assistant and an admin assistant mentor, and then this job. So my part in this and why I was interested in this is kind of twofold. One is, and I don't know if you want to know all this stuff, but one is that, of course, working in the schools, we did a lot of matching up of students with the staff. And I thought that that was a really good thing. And then we made a relationship with those kids. And then if there was an issue, then, I could go to that student and maybe calm them down and bring them into the office, and you would, do stuff together, and then it would be, it would be good. And that has happened actually. So it was good. The other part of this is that I have a 15-year-old granddaughter who is living in a slightly dysfunctional home. And so I need to pay attention to this kind of stuff. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Janice. Okay. So we did our introductions, our agenda. We talked about our lovely guest, Kimberly, coming from Norwood School. We're going to do a bit of planning, and we'll just ask that you let us know what you're going to need during that time, because we had a couple of activities planned. And I know that you've had an opportunity to see some of our resources and visit our website. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our next steps for next year. Caroline, did you want to go over this quickly?
Sure. So Janice, you've probably seen this before. I'm not sure if Kimberly knows, but she probably does too. knows a little bit about the Alberta Mentoring Partnership. So it is a partnership made up of government ministries, government-funded organizations, schools, community agencies, working together. And the vision is, we know that young people thrive through mentoring relationships. So the mission of AMP is to strengthen Alberta's capacity to support and enhance mentoring. So the Alberta Mentoring Partnership doesn't do any direct mentoring, but we support schools and organizations that do. Do you want me to talk about this one, Kim? Or do you want to?
I need to
Oh,
sorry. There. Okay, I think I'm good now. So we have the Collaborative Community Network, and it's a 3-year grant from a private foundation, and it's helping AMP to support and provincial collaborative relationships between schools and community organizations so that we can increase teen mentoring across Alberta. So we've hosted a whole series of virtual webinars, which we called some standalone ones, which the Intergenerational Mentoring. I believe you joined us when Tanya was here, and that was part of our Cohort series, and today is kind of the wrap up of that Cohort series. So yeah, and then going into next year, we'll have a summit in October, which will bring a whole bunch of speakers together to help share their experiences and provide resources for those looking at doing teen mentoring. So Caroline, I'm thinking that we might just want to skip this piece and go right into Kimberly.
Kimberly, yeah. So I'm really excited to have Kimberly here today to share her experiences with virtual mentoring with her class at Norwood School. And I've known Kimberly for a long time because I had the pleasure of working with her mom. So I kind of got to vicariously see Kimberly grow up and become an amazing elementary teacher. So with that, I'm just going to let you take it away, Kimberly.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. This is going to work. Awesome. Is that looking good?
Kimberly, I am so impressed that you were able to pull this together as well as do report cards and take your kids on a field trip. Amazing.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, as stated, my name is Kimberly Buckberger, and I am a grade 1 teacher here at Norwood School. And this year we've had the pleasure of being partnered with another grade 8 group and doing some virtual mentoring. And it has been a wonderful experience. I was a little skeptical at first, I'm not going to lie, especially just with grade 1s and computers, but it has turned out to be such a wonderful experience. So that being said, yeah, so I'm in the grade 1 classroom, and we are partnered with Spruce Avenue, which is our feeder school for junior high students, and we're partnered with a grade 8 class. So we're both inner city schools, and with that we come with, a lot of challenges, but a lot of really wonderful things as well. And we are meeting once a week with the grade 8s for about 30 to 40 minutes. And we are lucky to be working with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and that's who came to us with this program. But I understand that not all of the schools have that opportunity, and so I just wanted to speak on how they can set these things up without having a program as we do. So for the setup, we just made our own Google Classroom. So the grade 1s and the grade 8s, all the students joined it and the 2 teachers joined it. And that is where we post our meeting links. We just have the students all join one link together. So every week we just post one, that's the link they click. And then through that, we do breakout rooms. And another thing just to consider when you're setting something up like this is having enough space for students. That was something some trouble we ran into at the beginning. We had 28 grade ones in here on computers. And so the feedback was really loud. We didn't have headphones for our first meet. There was some wiggle breaks and movement breaks. And so there was just a lot going on in a classroom. And so we've adjusted and spread students out into the hallways, into different spaces throughout our school. We've also got some headphones. And so those things have really helped to kind of streamline this. Another important thing would be to match your buddies appropriately. So again, we were fortunate to have kind of that middleman, Big Brothers Big Sisters, do some matching. But if you were to be doing this on your own, I think it would be important to think about student interests. Learning needs is a big one, and doubling up if needed. So for example, in my classroom, I have a student with a severe speech delay. And so it's really hard for other students to understand her. And so we partnered her up with one of her friends in the classroom that can understand her really well. And so they both join on separate computers, but they're just in a group of 3. And so she can kind of help out that way. Absenteeism. So if you know certain kids are away a lot, maybe partnering them with other students who are away a lot in the other classroom. We've noticed that that's been kind of working well. And also just putting them into groups of 3 so that they do have someone there. And then another just important thing to think about is, because I remember thinking, well, what if the grade 8 student is not going to understand my students' learning needs? They've all really risen to this challenge and done such a wonderful job. So I think it's important to remember that you don't need, the best of the best of your students to be mentors. They've all just really stepped up and done such an incredible job. Another important thing to remember and talk to your students about is boundaries. So again, with Big Brothers Big Sisters, they were really adamant that this is just strictly a school relationship. And that's kind of to cover their bases, but I think it's important to have this conversation with students regardless, and talk to them about not sharing, for example, online gaming usernames or phone numbers or meeting after school at the park, things like that. So just a school relationship. Again, we talked about not sharing secrets, making sure that they're talking about appropriate subject matter, dressing appropriately, having an appropriate background. That kind of comes into play, especially if you have students that are at home learning. So just thinking about what's in the background. And also stressing that we had a beginning of the friendship, a middle of the friendship, and then at the end of the school year or the end of your virtual mentoring program, that this friendship would end. So having that conversation with them from the start. Also, we talked about trusting your feelings, and if something doesn't feel right, just call for a teacher. And again, I'm lucky to have that Big Brothers kind of coordinator always in the classroom with me during this time. And I'm always in here, and my mom actually volunteers on Mondays, and that's when we do it. So we have 3 adults in here, which is wonderful. So another thing that has been really helpful for us is establishing a routine. So we know students thrive on routine. So we just implemented a routine right away into this virtual mentoring, and the students really appreciate that. They know exactly what's coming. So things like having a check-in first thing. So asking specific questions. You can talk to the older students about this. What specific questions could you ask them today? So instead of just, how's your day going? Maybe what games did you play at recess? Or what did you have for breakfast this morning? Or if you could go to the zoo, what animal would you like to see? So just specific questions that get them talking. Next, we always have some sort of activity with a math or a literacy focus. And this has been really cool to see. So we've got them sharing their screens, and so they can both kind of work on this little activity together, where whether it's a math game or a sight word game or something like that, just something that they can both partake in. We always have wiggle breaks, because it is very important for especially our grade 1 students to move. And we noticed that just sitting on the computer for 30 to 40 minutes is really hard for them to do. So we did add in some time for little breaks, little dances or movement breaks of some sort. The next one, we always have a choice activity for them. So something like I Spy or doing a directed drawing together, just something fun. And again, to build that relationship. And then a story. We use the site Epic Books. So it's an online story website where you can just project the story and then read it. So that's worked really well. Or sometimes the grade 1s really love to read them a story. So they'll get them a story from their leveled reading bin and read that to their buddy, which is lovely to see. And then we always have a little goodbye at the end. Something to think about is possibly creating these lesson plans for them ahead of time. I know for the first couple months we did that. So we picked the check-in questions. We picked the activities, we picked the wiggle breaks. And so we kind of gave it this format to them over and over again for a couple of weeks until they kind of got used to it. And then we gave them the opportunity to pick their own wiggle break from a bank of wiggle breaks, or pick the specific questions that they wanted to ask them, or pick whether or not they were doing math and literacy. So kind of giving them some ownership. And also thinking about what their buddy would like. So once they got to know their buddy a little bit more, they can kind of tailor it to their needs. And maybe their buddy needs to have more movement. So maybe they put in a couple wiggle breaks. Maybe their buddy doesn't really like to do the movements, and so they skip out on them. So just tailoring them to the specific student needs. So some of the benefits and challenges. The biggest one is just that connection and conversation, especially after these past few years. Just practicing a back and forth conversation with another person is so huge for our little ones. And so just listening to them chat has honestly been my favorite part. Aside from all the wonderful games and literacy activities and math games, just listening to them chat and laugh with each other and ask questions and converse has been amazing. Another great benefit is just they're getting way more tech savvy. And again, like I said, I was pretty skeptical at the beginning. Trying to get 28 students logged onto a computer and onto a Meet is just a feat in its own. So I was pretty nervous, but they are able to log on, get on there, they can share their screen, they know how to close tabs, which is really amazing, especially at their age. The leadership, obviously, that the older kids get, you just see them shine in a different way that they typically do in school. And some of those, shy kids or kids that are not, excelling in math or reading are just really able to shine in a different way, which is so wonderful to see. And again, some challenges, of course, the technical issues. Again, like I said, I'm really thankful to have 3 adults in the room during this time. And I know not everyone gets that. So just giving yourself lots of time. I think it took probably 30 minutes to get us all logged in at the beginning. Now we're about 10 minutes to get us all logged in and ready, which is obviously much better. And again, just having them all in that small space is another challenge. So finding ways and being creative, what areas can you use in your school to spread out? And yeah, the list goes on with classrooms, speech delays, behaviors, attendance issues. There's so many things that do pose a challenge. But to be honest, I was just so shocked with how amazing and smooth this program has ran, and just the benefits far outweigh any of the challenges. Here is some lovely feedback that we've gotten from both the grade 8s and the grade 1s. And so we had little mini interviews with them. So maybe I'll just give you a moment to read. They're very sweet. There's some on that page, and then there's another page as well. My personal favorite, we asked them what they would like to do for the end of the year, and one student said they'd love to go to Disneyland. It's like, wouldn't we all? So yeah, it's been just such an amazing experience. Of course, it takes extra time. It takes a little extra work for sure. But like I said, the benefits from this have been so worth it and so amazing, and our students just love it. We actually have the opportunity next Monday, our grade 8s are actually walking over to Norwood School, and they're going to have a popsicle with their buddy and play in the park. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of a fun way to end off the school year. And we're hoping to get this up and running early next year as well. So if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
So I don't have any, well, I do have some comments, but holy smokers, Kimberly, you are an amazing teacher. First of all, I can tell that already. And to how, first of all, how did Big Brothers approach you, or how did this start?
Yeah, Big Brothers approached the principal, and she came to me and said, would you be willing to? And of course I was like, absolutely. And then I thought about it and I was like, oh, 28 grade 1s on a computer. I don't know about this. Just in my head, I was saying these things. And again, it all fell into place. There was a few hiccups at the beginning, like I said, with computers and feedback and whatnot, but yeah, it has been magical.
It's amazing. And I know you did, I had underlined absences because I worked at Eastwood School when it was still open. And that is also it was one of the 7 inner city schools that were all partnered.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of know what the students, what the I forget how to say it, but what it's like there.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by the grade 8s that you got to see that growth in them, and that they got to shine in a different way. I think that is, what we're all hoping for, of course, is, and then, they will feel good about something in their life if there isn't anything, or they'll feel really good about this thing and maybe pass that on to somebody else. Right. So I think that's amazing. And I like that you had extra adults in your room, and I think that's something that, I don't know, what organization would be in charge of that, but, maybe asking adults, like I would totally volunteer for that, just to, be there in the room to do that. So, there's got to be other people like me that would do that kind of stuff. So I thought that was a great idea. And I liked that you sort of led them for a couple of weeks to show them how it works, so that you didn't just, let them do whatever, or they didn't know what to do, because where do they learn this from, right? So I really liked that idea of the lesson plans and guiding them, and then giving them ownership. And then they could just fly, right? I thought that was great. And that grade 1s are tech savvy. I mean, I already have to ask my kids for stuff. So I think that's a great idea. One of the questions I had was for technical issues. So what about the hardware in each school? did each school have enough hardware, and would you, like, I don't know, I mean, I worked at Major General Griesbach for the last part of, you know, where we had Chromebooks and such. And so I'm just wondering if, you know, is there enough hardware and is it up to date enough for, you know, this to be happening on a regular basis?
Yeah, we're super lucky here at Norwood. Each floor has, so we have 3 floors and each floor has a cart of Chromebooks. I think there's about 30 in each. And so I just spoke with the teachers on my floor and I just said every Monday at this specific time, is it okay if I use these? And so everyone's been lovely and we've been able to use them during that time. But yeah, again, that's something that you'd have to consider with your school, but we do have up-to-date Chromebooks here. We're very, very fortunate.
Wonderful. And so where do you see this going next year? You're still teaching grade 1 as far as you know?
As far as I know, I'm still in grade 1. So I would love to, again, partner with Spruce Ave. I think it's really cool. I don't know, same demographic, same kids. And so I think that partnership is really beautiful. I think with the opportunity of being in person, maybe having some meets online, some meets in person would be nice, especially in those colder months and weeks when, you know, maybe there's too much going on and we can't get to another school. I think it's a great opportunity to have the computers, but I think more in-person mentoring would be ideal, but the option of both is great.
For sure. So, and just for data wise, and I'm sure this is more your field for the AMP, what will there be any follow up with the grade 9s, like with the grade 8s this year that are going into grade 9, and, you know, just seeing if there would be anything else that they could bring them into, or would that be Big Brothers Big Sisters maybe doing that?
Maybe, yeah, it would be interesting to see and to kind of follow that and see what benefits there are and whatnot. Yeah, I can definitely chat with our coordinator and see what her plan is for that. I'm not too sure. But yeah, that's a great idea.
Awesome. Very, very good. And that's why we love young teachers, because they have lots of energy and will do stuff like this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You are amazing.
Thank you so much.
Kimberly, I think Janice asked most of my questions, but I have one that kind of goes towards staff. So we know that, you know, sometimes when other teachers see what's going on at first, when they're approached, they're like, too much work. But obviously there's lots of success that's come out of this partnership with Spruce Ave. So you've got 2 teachers who found a highly successful virtual mentoring project. Do you have any other staff members that might say, hey, I want to jump on board and do this next year?
Definitely. So Big Brothers just had, I guess, time for 1 class this year. And so I was really fortunate to get that spot. But I know there's a lot of teachers who really, really wanted it and who would love to do it next year. And so I think I might actually just pose the opportunity, I guess, to my principal that I could sit with staff and kind of talk to them about how they could run this on their own. Because again, we don't all have the opportunity to have someone coordinate it for us. So I think it's so doable. And of course, we're very grateful to have Big Brothers here, but I don't think you need it. So I think, yeah, chatting with other staff, I know there's a lot in my school who want to do it. So chatting with them and trying to get them on board, I think is something I'll definitely bring up for next year.
And Kimberly, that's that's really important, I think, to AMP, is to look at when there isn't an organization involved, how can AMP support those, those initiatives or those partnerships between schools and classrooms. So again, if there are other teachers at Norwood that are interested, I'm sure that AMP could give some support through pointing them in the right direction for resources and the online mentor orientation and some of that as well. So if you're talking to them, you can certainly pass that along.
Sure, yeah, that sounds amazing. Perfect.
I just wanted to comment on that matching, and I thought that was so brilliant for your student that has some speech language challenges to pair with another student who does understand them, so that they can still participate and get something out of it. I just thought that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and we wanted her to not just sit next to the other student, but also be able to log on and have that her own experience. We do just sit them next to each other in the classroom. So when she turns her mic on and we'll talk, the other student can just say, "Oh, she's trying to tell us about this." That other student's so respectful, and so yeah, it's beautiful to see.
I'd also, just being in this inclusion world my whole career, commend you for modeling and that release of control for the grade 8 students, so providing them the lesson plan and then slowly releasing that to say, okay, now you can pick the movement activity. So starting with something that's light and enjoyable that there's really no way that they could mess that kind of piece up as they're thinking about their buddy, but then also prompting them to say, think about what your interests are as you're starting to plan the rest of the lesson plan. So yeah, well done. Very well done.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
Again, we're super fortunate. Our coordinator helps us with those lesson plans and whatnot. But yeah, I think just making sure that there's enough activities and that they have those specific questions, especially the first couple times they're meeting. Because when you think about it, if there's just two strangers who open their computer, that's what I was so worried about. I was so worried they would just kind of sit there and stare at each other. So it didn't happen because there was so much to do and they had so many activities and so many specific questions that I think it just made everyone feel more comfortable. It made us feel comfortable. It made the grade 8s, the grade 1s. So I think that's a super important step. And then, yeah, it's cool to kind of give them some ownership and choice once they get used to it.
Al, any comments?
So when you talked, Kimberly, about next year, would you want them going into grade 2 to pair up with the same students going to grade 9? And then you would start with a new fresh group of grade 1s? Like, what are you thinking for next year, possibly?
I hadn't thought about that. That would be pretty interesting though. I know there is a lot of movement, especially in the inner cities. So I don't know that we would all be able to get the exact same person, but even even a few of them, that would be really neat. I didn't think about that. I'll have to mention that to our coordinator. In terms of next year, I was thinking if the same grade 8 teacher was on board and he was teaching that grade, that we would just kind of partner again, just because it's been a pretty smooth ride. So I think not rocking the boat in that sense, it would make it easier for both of us. But that's a good suggestion. That would be cool for them to connect again next year.
Thanks, Caroline. Because when you did that thing that was part of it, Alberta Education, I know we brought the one group in, and then the next year the same group came when they went up a grade, correct?
They did. So I think the plan was to do that for 2 years with the same group and then switch. Okay. And partly because we started kind of midway through the year, so there wasn't a lot of time to kind of build those relationships. So that was part of the decision. But then I think the plan was to then, like, I think it was grade 4, then 5, and then go back and do grade 4 and grade 5 again.
Yeah, that continuum piece was great, but we're hearing more and more about sometimes the short term is good as well, just to get them so kind of transitional mentoring, right? Just get them to that next stage, and then you start another group and bring them through, and then so it's kind of for that 1 year, and it's quite, there's a lot going on, and then the next year somebody else, as Kimberly's saying, somebody else has the opportunity to enjoy it and also experience it. Yeah, I
was thinking too, and I was just going to say to Kimberly, and I don't know which other teachers are interested, but some schools are looking at pairing grade 6s with grade 8 in the feeder junior high. And then the 6s kind of get to know the grade 8, so that when they go the following year, they already know some cool grade 9 students. So I mean, it wouldn't have to be that particular configuration because you've got those grade 8s that you want to work with, but I don't know if there's another class of grade 8s that would be interested in doing that. But it's kind of a cool way to ease that transition for some of our students between elementary and junior high.
Kimberly, what is the high school that you feed into?
That's a good question. I'm not too sure, actually.
What this demonstrates for me, because a lot of times when people think of virtual mentoring, it's like, oh, the technology is going to be an issue. How do we keep them engaged? But you've actually addressed a lot of those issues. If 28 grade 1s can get on, and even if the first little bit of time that they're getting together takes more time, it's still that whole activity of getting on, and probably lots of coaching from the grade 8s, on how to find things on the screen. So they're still doing mentoring in that kind of tech way. So if you can do it with younger kids, imagine what could be done with our older kids. And Caroline, you and Al, from junior high and high school, a lot of times those teachers we just don't have the time. But if you could schedule 30 to 40 minutes for grade 8s to meet with a grade 10 student, or, you could kind of do that transition piece. It just opens up that world of mentoring, right? So thank you for sharing your wisdom, because I can see so many different applications for all grades. So if somebody says it can't be done, if grade 1s can do it, they can do it.
Certainly, if we can do it, everyone can.
Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. Janice, before you came on, Kimberly was talking about, as well as doing all of this in a field trip that they've gone on and they're planning. She's also got report cards. So at this time, Kimberly, feel free to log off, and we're going to continue to work with Janice and chat with her about what she'd like to see around mentoring.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for having me, and nice to meet you all.
Have a great evening.
Bye, you too.
I'm just looking at the district map, and it looks like maybe it's East Glen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think technically Vic is their neighborhood school, but I don't know how many of the kids actually go to Vic. I think a lot go to East Glen. When I was at Macaulay, a few went to Shep as well.
Yes.
Or not Shep, for the high school, but I think they kind of get scattered.
Yes, because they should be going to Vic, but of course, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
You're right.
Thanks for that, Janice. I'm a rural girl, so although I did grow up and go to school in Edmonton, all of my teaching has been in rural areas, so I don't know kind of the school placement here in Edmonton. So Caroline and I had kind of planned to talk a little bit about school-based mentoring, team mentoring, and then just have folks talk about, what their plans were for next year, kind of talking about their celebrations. And I think we just got a really good sample of a celebrated program through Kimberly's presentation. So Janice, we're going to open it up to you. What would you like us to talk about in this next little bit?
So I'm just amazed by the information that I've gotten from just the few times that I've been online with you. And I think that that's where we have to get the word out, because just what Kimberly has done through Big Brothers and Big Sisters, but that could be done, you're right, through, just matching up teachers. So I think that it would be, and some of the stories that I heard from some of the other teachers, they've already done some amazing things with their classes. And, but I think it's, drawing in volunteers and, now what was that? I guess it is Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We used to have at Eastwood, a matched student with an older, or not an older, but an adult. And so the adult would come to the school and and do stuff with them for an hour, and needed a room or something. So that was a really good thing, and that student really looked forward to having that person come and continue. She continued on until she was in high school. So I know that was a great success story. But I know that we have, staff retiring all the time. We have staff leaving this district, and yet still have, that need for giving to students. And that's a huge resource that I don't think anybody is really tapping. So that would be my comment. I don't know how to do that, but I'm sure you guys do. But I'm just saying this is a big resource that you could be using.
That's a great idea, Janice. And I mean, maybe I don't know if we've even thought in the last little while about approaching the Retired Teachers Association and seeing who's there that would be willing to go into a classroom once a week and help out with something like Kimberly's program. Because we know that, I mean, Big Brothers Big Sisters is a wonderful organization. We know that in the big cities, they don't have the capacity to support every school that's interested, and in smaller places, they don't have an organization. So that Retired Teachers Association might be a good place to go.
And
Welcome.
not just teachers, right?
Yes.
Support staff.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
Janice, is there a support staff? Is there something similar for support staff that have retired? Is there any kind of organization or group?
No, unfortunately, that doesn't mean that we can't make one. We can't start one. I mean, I think that's a good idea.
Have to figure out another way.
Yeah. So we have access to, we have access to all of our database as a union, and that could be something that we, can give out to not just retirees, but to all support staff, right? Now, maybe
send something out.
Yeah, but lots of support staff work half-time or, work part-time. And so could maybe, would maybe want to volunteer for some time. So, or they leave and go somewhere else and want to, or go to school and can volunteer for, a couple of months, or maybe they don't have a class on Thursday afternoons or something, right? I think that that's a huge resource. And I think if we can get the information out to all of our support staff, that they might know somebody too, right? There's lots of possibilities.
Yeah, great ideas. Thanks.
Welcome, Hazel. We know that this is kind of a tricky time for some folks, so we're glad that you were able to make it home and join us. Hazel, we have most of our AMP staff here, and then we have Janice, who is the first vice president of her CUPE local, and I just was wondering if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you joined us tonight.
Well, I've been trying to follow you as much as possible over the months, and I'm a substitute teacher, and I hate to use that word substitute because of its degrading name. So I guess I'm just Hazel, the teacher, and trying to find out more ways of helping out with the kids with whom I interact. There are a lot of problems in our area, as there are, I guess, in all areas now. And so I'm just interested to listen in and see what's cooking. But I sure like the idea of having this friendship group coming through. If that could ever happen, that'd be wonderful.
And Hazel, what area are you from?
Cold Lake.
Wonderful. So when you have a couple of free moments in your busy substitute schedule, you'll have to click onto the link and watch kind of the first few minutes of this webinar, because we had Kimberly Buckberger, who is a grade 1 teacher, who shared with us her experience of a virtual mentoring program between her grade 1 students and grade 8 students from Spruce Avenue. So these are two inner city schools in in Edmonton. And then following that presentation, Janice was just talking about what a great way to be able to help out some of these classrooms, and was providing us with some of her creative thinking so that AMP can kind of get onto some of those pieces.
Yes, a lot of the people I work with don't even have the internet service or computers in their homes. So coming into the school would sure be an ideal situation in our area. But yeah, whatever can look forward to and look promising is pretty exciting. It's very hopeful.
Caroline, were you part of the intergenerational webinar that we had done, or was that the one that you weren't able to join us for?
I was part of one of them, but not the last. Oh yeah, I was part of the last one where John spoke.
Yes.
Yeah.
That webinar, as well as when the Big's Pen Pal program, they talked a lot about the technology teaching for both the younger as well as our seniors, you know, how they learned a lot of technical skills when they were able, and in some I think it was in linkages, they were talking about how because the home didn't have a lot of the technology, but they were able to, the school was able to pair them up and make sure that the devices were there on both ends so that they could continue that. So lots of different creative ideas for mentoring out there for sure.
And I keep thinking if those grade ones can figure it out, you know, that's pretty amazing that they can share their screen and close tabs, and holy.
Perfect. Do we want to share a little bit about our school-based mentoring?
Sure.
Okay, so Hazel and Janice, when we talk about school-based mentoring, actually, it's just exactly what Kimberly was talking about. So it might involve another community partner like Big Brothers Big Sisters. In the rural areas, it could be a friendship center, it could be a high school or a junior high and an elementary school partnering up, or it could just be multi-grades within that in that school. And then we talk about matching and doing the training, and any of the support is basically done in-house, so within the schools. And sometimes our community partners, such as different businesses, senior centers, some of the churches might be able to come in and help with being the volunteers to be those mentors for our little mentees. We also have examples of school mentoring where they're just trying to create different relationships within the school. So if we had, for example, there's a school just outside of Slave Lake in Canoe, so it's a grade, it's kindergarten to grade 12 school. And so we try to do some family groupings in terms of, we have families that have kids at different grade levels and they would bring them together. So but then we would also be bringing different grade levels together. So for example, our grade 6s and grade 8s, our grade 2s and our grade 4s. So they would do some of those cross grade pieces. And then some of the support that can be provided would be some of the online training resources that AMP has for mentors and mentees. Caroline, did you want to share a little bit about teen mentoring?
Sure. One of the teen mentoring is actually one of the fastest growing forms of mentoring in our country and in the US as well. And, you know, partially because in schools we have a little bit of a captive audience to recruit to be mentors, but also I think because of the benefits to both the mentors and the mentees, you know, and as Kimberly was talking about how those grade 8 students could really shine. And if you think about a grade 8 student who may not be the best reader, but they can read to their grade 1 buddy and feel really good about it. And same with the math. So it's a real opportunity to boost those teen self-confidence, and there's lots of research around the mental health benefits of giving to somebody else. And so it's really becoming more and more popular. And because sometimes it's getting tougher to find adults to volunteer, it's a way to put some relationships into our younger students' lives that they may not have before. So we're really trying to look at how can we increase the amount of team mentoring that's happening across the province. And I really appreciated what Kimberly said about how it is wonderful to have the support of an organization, but that she really thought that it was doable without that support. So that was really encouraging to me. And we've got I just put a couple of the resources in the chat. One of the things we are going to do today is just allow people some time to look in there, because both of those documents, the Framework for Building Mentoring Relationships and the Team Mentoring Toolkit, have lots of really great information and templates and other resources to first get you thinking about setting up a mentoring program and what you need to consider, and some really good questions to ponder as you think about that, as well as then information about all of those, the Team Mentoring Toolkit, all of those different pieces that Kim talked about how do you recruit your volunteers, how do you match them, and Kimberly talked a little bit about that matching process. That idea about the training. And then I think what's really critical in team mentoring, well, other mentoring too, but more so in team mentoring, is that ongoing support for the mentors. And Kimberly didn't talk about it, but I'd be curious to know how that grade 8 teacher kind of checked in with those students after their mentoring session to see how it went. Were there any questions? Sharing some of their great experiences, sharing maybe some of the challenges, and as a group talking about how they might overcome those challenges, or what are some ideas or suggestions. So there are resources for that. There's also the resource around community-based mentoring and starting a community-based mentoring program as well. So lots of information and ideas out there to start thinking about. And the online training too. I always forget to mention that, but there is the online training that mentors can take, and it's at no cost, as well as for team mentors. There's some really good information in the high school team mentoring handbook as well that schools could use to get those mentors ready and give them more information beyond what's in the online training.
I just had a question or maybe a thought. So those grade 8 students that have now gone through this mentoring, and you talked about, partnering them up with next year as, grade 9s. And I know this is like COVID, right? You don't have any data yet because you haven't done it. But I'm just wondering if, in taking the however many out of the 28 kids, maybe the 5 that would may continue with that, or become adults and think that was really great for me, I would like to give back, like staying in touch with them. Or I don't know how you would do that, or if Big Brothers would do that, but I was just thinking it would be just to encourage that and keep them thinking about that, and giving back in some way.
Janice, I know a friend of mine works for Calgary, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and often when they have people contacting them about being a mentor, a lot of them were mentors in high school as high school students, and then they took a little bit of a breather maybe for university when they didn't have as much time, but now they're coming back to it. So I don't know if there's a way to formally track it, but it's interesting to hear. And they keep some stats on how many of their volunteers that return were mentors at one point or had a mentor.
And Caroline, we have that video that we'd shown a while back, that little clip. I think it's Steven's story. And he was mentored, so he was a mentee. And through the clip, he talks about everything that he learned through his mentor, and then talks about now that he's older, he would like to mentor somebody younger. So there's an example of how he was kind of on the receiving end of it, and then decided as a young adult to go and support another student or child in his area. Just curious, Janice and Hazel, have you had an opportunity to check out the AMP website or any of the, I know Janice, we had a long conversation when we worked with at the April session, but Hazel, have you had a chance to take a look at the AMP website?
Actually, I have not yet. I've got all these things piled up, starting getting set for the end of June.
Totally understand what that's like. And sometimes if you at least just know where to go, and then once you get onto that website, you can always connect up with one of us from AMP, and we can help you to walk through those steps when the time is right.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sounds great.
And
Thanks.
in addition to the print resources, we sometimes forget to mention that a lot of the webinars have been archived. And so there's an opportunity to watch the webinars on, through the website as well, summer, when you have more time. And then you can look at the ones that are of most interest to you as well.
Listening to them also on your road to wherever you're headed.
I just wanted to, talking, or Hazel saying that she was in Cold Lake and talking about rural communities and how difficult it would be to, maybe get together or have maybe just other smaller communities doing the mentoring. I think that's such a great opportunity to talk to, and maybe it's across the world, but talk to different people. And but for rural communities, if you're a small community, and I don't even know because I'm a city girl, but a small community that is mostly farms or something like that, and then mentoring with another farming community, and they have things in common, right? So then they would be able to talk about things. And I don't know, I just think that there's so much possibility here. You guys are just amazing. Amazing.
Hazel, do you see that as being a possibility? Do you see any mentoring happening in any of the schools that because as a substitute, you get to see different classrooms and different schools. Are you seeing any even informal mentoring happening?
Actually, I've only been going to one school, but I did spend a little time at another school for a while. And yes, there was some mentoring going on there. It was on a reserve, and some of the people from the reserve would come in and talk to the kids. What I find where I'm at, I'm on a, Métis settlement. But I find that the older the kids are, the better they relate to the little fellows, and that they are excellent mentors. The thing is, they themselves need mentoring. But when you ask them to mentor someone, it seems like their good points and their intelligence comes forward, and they can lead and direct. I saw one child who, he's a real deviant in the classroom, and yet he took this autistic boy in the gym and said, come on, invited this kid out to play, and come on, throw the ball, try to hit that basket. And he kept on encouraging this autistic boy till the boy actually did make a basketball put the ball in the net. And I told the boy afterwards, I said, I'm so proud of you. I said, you're so mature. And I said, what you've done for this little fellow is wordless. You cannot ever express how the boy felt when he got that ball in the basket. So I can see a lot of hope if we can get them to help one another. And we do have shared reading once in a while, but that doesn't seem to be as good for some reason. Once in a while, you get a couple together that work well. But I just like that gym episode or outside on the playground is where I really notice how the older kids come forward to the younger ones. So there is hope. I think it should be more attention should be given to it.
Thanks for sharing your experiences, Hazel. And that leads us really well into kind of that whole idea of informal mentoring. And I know that Caroline talked a little bit about it. Like Kimberly had said, you know, she could see being able to do something like this without needing an outside agency. So there's lots of examples of kind of what that informal mentoring looks like in our schools. So the shared reading or the reading buddies, but with a little bit more structure to it. Cross-graded activities where you might have your junior highs moving to some different cross-graded homerooms. I think Caroline, you had an example of a junior high cross-graded activity.
Like a K to, are you thinking the K to 9 school?
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah. We paired up our junior high students actually, and some of them from, well, all of the kids that were in the junior high kind of behavior class with little people to read, and it was amazingly successful. And again, another example of how they really rose to that occasion and were able to feel good about what they could do to help their little buddies. And, you know, again, some of them weren't the strongest readers or weren't the best mathematicians, but they could sure help the younger students. And what we also found is that some of the students that had struggled to read themselves or struggled in math were actually great at helping because they knew so many different strategies from when they were trying to learn it. So again, yeah, great examples. And even the cross school ones, you know, you can have situations like Kimberly's without having an organization. Again, it's a bit more work for the teachers, but it can be done. And I know of grade 8, actually, it's interesting because it was Kimberly's mom was working at a junior high, supporting a project there. And it was the grade 8 teacher there was mentoring, their students were mentoring grade 6 students in the feeder school, and they were piloting the team mentoring toolkit. That's when it was in the pilot phase, and that worked really well. And the 2 teachers actually took on, you know, most of that work with some support from Vicki.
That reminds me of, and it goes into that transition mentors. So in Slave Lake, there's a K to 3 school, a 4 to 6 school, and then a 7 to 12 school. And the grade 3, there was 2 grade 3 teachers that wanted to help that transition for our grade 3 students going over to what they would call a semi-middle school. And so they hooked up with the grade 5 teacher, and they did lots of activities, and it was simple little activities like getting them to show them around the school, getting them to learn how to use a lock for a locker, showing them the playground, you know. So they would come over during a lunch hour and do that. And it was just 2 teachers who reached out and got 2 other teachers involved. And so what developed out of this friendship, and then giving the kids also times to just sit and give them some guiding questions about, like, what questions do you have as you're going? Like, some of them said, we heard at this school that you're not allowed to go to the bathroom. You're only allowed to go at like lunchtime. Well, sometimes I have to go before then. So dispelling those myths, those kinds of pieces. And so what happened out of that is the following year, when those grade 3s became grade 4s, they actually had friends on the playground that were grade 6 students. And then once that got going, all of a sudden it was our grade 5 or grade 6 teachers over at that school saying, we need to do this going over to the high school. And then the junior high teachers saying, hey, you know what? Our junior high and high school are kind of 2 opposite ends. So we need to do this for our junior high to high school. So something that started off as a little nugget for just a simple little transitions between an elementary school and a middle school actually went throughout our whole community, throughout our different grades. And my understanding is it's still happening to this day, because they feel it's so powerful, even when teachers leave the building and go someplace else or retire. There's enough of a need there and a want for our teachers, for our students to do well, that it continues to this day. So those are some. This would just be some information, Janice and Hazel, for you to just be aware of, that there are some career and technology study credit courses. And my area of expertise is elementary. But I do know that high school students can receive credit for doing these mentoring activities. And Caroline, can you talk a little bit more? Because I know that you've had more experience in this area than I have.
Sure. So there's 5 1-credit courses that students can take, and they're around different aspects of mentoring. So there's an introduction to mentoring. There's one about being a mentor. There's one about being a mentee. So there's 5 of them that are available. And what some schools have done is they've sort of offered them, and I kind of say all at once. So instead of just doing module by module, what some schools have done is they've sort of looked at the outcomes across all 5, and then gone from there, because there is some overlap. One of those courses requires the high school student to actually mentor a younger student. So that's part of one of those courses. And yeah, again, and on our website in the Team Mentoring Network portal, a woman who's now a principal in a different district, but when she was a high school teacher in Fort Vermilion, she was one of the first to kind of get involved in these CTS courses, and she shared all of the resources that she used in order to do that. So if schools are interested, there's some really great information on the website that they can start with and not have to start from scratch as they move forward and plan it. But if this, and when the students complete all 5, they get a little certificate, and sometimes it looks great on a resume or whatever else it is that they're needing for work or for post-secondary. So those are available if schools are interested in looking at them and looking at offering them.
So Janice and Hazel, as we were planning, we thought we would go into some breakout rooms. We didn't know how many folks would be able to join us tonight. And Janice, I did notice you were wearing your Oilers jersey, and I am cognizant of the fact that there is a hockey game tonight. So we'll make sure that we get you out in enough time to prepare for that game. But instead of going in and discussing these questions, just any thoughts or ideas that are coming to your mind from the information that Caroline and I just shared with you.
So I'll just butt in. Sorry, Hazel, I'll just butt in. So I have a son that is also working as a support staff member in high school. And it's actually the brand new high school in Edmonton, in Southwest Edmonton, Dr. Ann Anderson. What an amazing school. Holy smokers. That is just, it's beautiful. And they are, I think they are doing a lot of mentoring in that school. The principal has set it up so that they're doing mentoring in that school through an elder, through Dr. Ann Anderson's nephew, I believe it is. So just seeing that, I think the kids would be open to some of this, especially like the credit courses or, something like that. But tell me how kids find out about this. Where does that information come from? How do they find out about that?
About the CTS courses, Janice? The school would have to offer them. So the first step would be the schools would need to know they exist, which is sometimes, sometimes we find out that schools don't know they exist. So it's really, it's to kind of starts with the school knowing about it and having a teacher that's interested in teaching it, and then kind of letting the students know about it. So that's usually the progression. I guess if you had a bunch of really keen students, they could maybe gently pressure the school to look at that. But that's usually kind of how it starts. When schools are looking at which of those career and technology studies courses they're going to offer, have the capacity to offer.
Yeah, so I do know that because I was in a K-9 school, and so we would offer, you know, options is what it used to be called, but yeah, CTS courses, and so we could pick which ones, and you know, but again, it's getting that message out to whoever, you know. I want to get it out to our support staff, who can then gently, you know, say, hey, I heard about this one, and I've got this great kid that I think, you know, would benefit from mentoring or benefit from being a mentor, right? And so I think that just getting that message out, which I want to help you with in my district.
And Janice, I do know there have been situations where, I mean, because it's a course you get credits for, there needs to be a certificated teacher involved. But I also know that there are some schools where the support staff help out with that actual mentoring piece. So, you know, it's kind of a combo there, and that's really great to have that support of somebody who can be on site when the kids are mentoring and be there for support and answer questions and those kinds of things.
Anything from you, Hazel?
Well, I'm just thinking about the TAs at the school, and I was speaking with one yesterday who is very eager to learn different things and do different things with the children, as well as things for their community, because there's so much crime in the community right now. And she's an amazing 19-year-old gal, and I'm certainly going to share this with her. And she's in a position in the community where she could probably get something going a lot quicker than I could. But very interesting stuff. And yes, I will be sharing this and seeing what I can do from my perspective.
Al, it makes me, our conversation is making me think about ways that, you know, because AMP helps to share and partner folks up, you know, almost a virtual postcard, if you will, of like, did you know about CTS courses, that we can get to schools and teachers, community members, put into the hands of beginning teachers, the substitute teacher conference, you know, to different QP organizations, you know, so whether it's a physical postcard that kind of gets out, or just a virtual one that's easily shareable, that has little snapshots of information, to get this information out. And then of course, always the link back to the AMP website or to us to help support that. Hazel, you were saying that there's always this need for time, like trying to find time. And I'm wondering if we don't give you and Janice a little bit of an opportunity of time here to just play around. So in the chat box, you can see that we have our albertamentors.ca website. It's not a link, so you'd have to copy it and put it into your toolbar. But then there's also the Teen Mentoring Toolkit that Caroline put a link to, and the framework for building mentoring relationships in school. I'm wondering if you guys would be open to just spending, you know, 5 to 8 minutes just to play around. And then as you have questions in playing around in those documents, you know, just unmute yourself and ask questions. Even if it's I'm not getting it, or I can't find the link to, we'd be there to help, to support you. But just to kind of honor that you're spending your time with us today. So yeah, just take some time to take a look at those resources. Feel free to turn your camera off as you're exploring, and then just we'll give you till 5:30, and then so that'll be about 8 minutes. And if we need more time, we can certainly give you more time for that
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you.
recording. Yeah. So we were just so engaged in our conversation that I completely forgot that we had, had stopped the recording. So this slide here is just kind of showing some of the pieces. We put the links to the framework and the teen mentoring toolkit. We talked about some of the high school resources. Caroline alluded to the online mentor training, and then we talked about the CTS courses. So providing folks with that link to the CTS courses would be helpful as well. And then we have a teen mentoring portal. And the idea behind this is as you register for the portal, it would just connect you with others and provide you an opportunity to have those conversations. So, Janice, you might find other QP folks in different QP regions that might want to join in with you to have that conversation on how do you spread the word to support staff. And then, Hazel, you might find other substitute teachers or other ideas on how to share the information from your area, even in Cold Lake. So you might find teachers or different organizations that might want to help out in the Cold Lake area. So it's just it's a connector, and that's really what the portal is all about.
And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, it's a really good way to find out about upcoming webinars, other events, and the new resources that are coming out. So that's a good source of information as well. And you don't get bombarded, but they come out regularly. And again, you'll find out about different events, things that are happening, resources.
So I just on your screen, I've just showed you. Am I sharing my screen? No. Sorry. On your screen, I've got the kind of QR code, so you can either show your put your phone up to the screen to subscribe to our newsletter, or when you get onto the AMP website, there's a link that you can collect directly on, and it will take you there. And then this also shows you some of our other social media pieces that you can take a look at where we share our information. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. We really do value the input that we get from the surveys. So after each of our webinars, we ask for your input so that we can actually plan for next year. And we're going to do a little bit of a conversation about what's going to happen next year in a few minutes. I think Caroline's going to try and stick this link into the chat box if you need to. I don't know if you're able to do that, Caroline.
I'm not sure I can either, but I will try. I don't need it. I'm on it already, so I don't know.
Oh, great.
It's just if Hazel needs it.
I can also stop sharing. That might be the easiest way to do this. And then I can just come out and find the link for Hazel. I have it in my PowerPoint, but sometimes it doesn't always work the way we want it to. If grade ones can figure it out, I'm encouraged that I can start to figure out. Yes. So I just put the link in the chat box. And while you're doing that, Caroline had shared with me this great song and little video. It's called 1 Minute, and it just really talks about, how important mentors. They talk teachers in here, but I believe that everyone can be a teacher, no matter what their call-in is like in life. My tongue twister there. And mentors are definitely teachers. So I thought I would share that while you're taking a minute to fill that out.
I think we can just assume that any adult that touches the lives of kids is what we can think about when we watch this.
I'm just going to play this right now.
Before he got to school, and then he showed up late looking like a fool. He had drool on his chin for waking up late.
It's not working that way, so I'm going to go to the link here if I can. And my screen. Caroline, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So,
And I can hear it too.
excellent.
His cup was full before he got to school, and then he showed up late looking like a fool. He had drool on his chin from waking up late, and an aching in his belly cause he barely ever ate. The clothes he wore were straight off the floor. There was an odor pretty hard to ignore. Before he goes to class he gotta show ID, but he lost it, $5 penalty. He just wants to sit down and take a deep breath, forget about his dad locked up for meth. But his homework once again he forgot, and the teacher gotta put him right on the spot. Like, where's it at? Why is it late? How come you can never keep nothing straight? And he don't want to debate, but he gets defensive. Says a couple things you could call offensive, but just like that kicked out of class. And that's one more class he might never pass. Told he can come back when he's ready to learn, but what's he gonna learn if he doesn't return? He'll learn being by himself is much less demanding. No failure and no reprimanding. It also ingrains his understanding. Adults in his life will just keep on stranding him on his own, keep leaving him alone. If he wanted neglect he could've just stayed home, but he came to school and he wants to grow. He's been through things no one should have to know. Now I'm not saying his behavior should be tolerated, but a little compassion is appreciated. Teaching is hard and we get frustrated, but so much harder when we're separated. One smile, one minute, and let him know you're there and that he's not alone in it. He looks tough, but he's not. This chat you give him might be all that he's got. He needs some hope. Give him some hope. Told you that 2 + 2 was like 25, what would you do? Probably teach, reteach, and then teach again. But if a kid talks back, then the lesson ends. We send him home, 3-day suspension. Call it discipline, but it lacks dimension. Completely ineffective in the way of prevention. Provides no process for ascension. Dissension, reinforced daily basis. Detention, administered, stuck in stasis. Think if we ministered true solutions, what would that do to our evolution? Restorative practice, revolution. Healing what hurts, purify the pollution. Some like to say that the system's broken. That doesn't really help with no suggestions spoken. There's people working hard from the inside out that the media never says much about. They report the mess and never the success, because people doing well doesn't sell much press. They stress the kid that got incarcerated, but not the at-risk that graduated. They never show his mom's face so elated, because the news is negatively saturated. So teachers try to stay positive, learn to let it go and then to forgive. There's quite a few kids that are counting on you, and there's so many sides to the job you do. You're an innovator, a co-creator, a mentor and a collaborator. Your classroom's a magical incubator, giving nourishment and there's nothing greater. One smile, one minute, and let him know you're there and that he's not alone in it. He looks tough, but he's not. This chat you give him might be all that he's got. He needs some hope. Give him some hope.
John Steinbeck once said that I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that there are as few as there are any other great artists. Teaching might even be the greatest of the arts, since the medium is the human mind and spirit. What kind of artist do you want to be?
Looking for my mute button. I hope that gave you some time to fill out our survey. Plans for next year. So we're already in that phase right now. We're planning to do webinars in September, November, and December. And the information that you provide us on the surveys helps us to determine what those topics may be. In October, on October 20th, we're having a full day summit. We're in the process of planning that right now. In January, what you'll find is lots of information around Mentor Month. And so by visiting our website and following our social media pages, you'll see lots of information about what's happening in and around the province around mentoring. And if you go onto our website now, you can look up what happened this past year and previous years for the Mentor Month. So there's some webinars that had taken place that you can watch or listen to as you're busy doing other pieces. In February and March, we're busy at our teachers' conventions, hosting different sessions to get the word out about mentoring, and then also to highlight what some of the schools are doing. So examples such as what Kimberly School was doing. And then in April and May, we'd like to host some more webinars. So that's kind of our plan moving forward. And with that, we'd like to make sure that if you're going to be joining us, if you would just invite a buddy to come to the sessions with you, and so that we can continue to spread the word. You know, bring a friend or two, and we'd love to meet with them and share this wonderful information. And I believe with that, that is the end of our time together. Caroline, do you have any last words? Al?
I really appreciate both Janice and Hazel being with us this afternoon. I think there were lots of great ideas, lots of suggestions and things that I hadn't even thought about before. So thanks very much for that. And thanks always to Shannon for providing all the support that you provide. And I just popped my email in the chat. So like I say, if any questions or anything come up, please feel free to get a hold of me.
Thank you all for letting me come in at the late moment. I really appreciate what I've learned and heard from the moment I got online here. So thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to more of this.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening and enjoy the hockey game tonight. Go Oilers.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for all of these. They were just, I cannot tell you how much information that you are sharing and how important this is, and we need to get the word out. So thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Janice.